Welcome to the Where We Can Agree stream. I'm the cul-de-sac hero. My co-host is fabulous Greg Swan. How do you do today, sir?
I am very fabulous. Thank you so much.
Fabulous as always. It's good to be great because I think you and I have the right way of perceiving and addressing life, which makes life good.
This is my take. Absolutely, yes. It's
Uh,
springtime in Arizona, so finally, it took forever. It's a month late, but
well,
it's finally getting warm, so I'm
it's
happy.
baseball season is getting started. It's a bit we had some amazing weather here in Ontario, and then it got back to the bitter cold. We had some snow, and it's raining now. And baseball practice just isn't so much fun when it's under 10 degrees Celsius.
You have to have limber muscles, and your dactyls are not limber in the cold. I don't know how anybody plays cold weather sports, but
Uh,
I saw a note on Facebook today that it was 32 degrees, which is 0 degrees Celsius in Canada, 32 degrees freezing at Lake Tahoe this morning. And that's just amazing to me. That particular part, the middle part of California leading into Nevada, has had a very, very brutal winter, just an incredible amount of snow. The global warming has really hit them very, very hard this year. I don't know, like 20 feet of snow, not necessarily accumulating all the same time, but over the course of the winter, an enormous amount. And of course, California is throwing all that water away because they have no way of storing it. They're
oh,
such idiots, but
they're so
um,
foolish.
they
We
are
wonder what.
unbelievably foolish. Actually, that it ties into all of the themes that you're kind of talking about today. That whatever is the stupidest procedure to take, that's the one that has to be implemented. The one that is most destructive, least productive of eudaimonia, least productive of human thriving, the one that is most likely to result in human squalor instead. That's the course of action we have to take. And
Well,
that's the despair that we have to fight with a better attitude, because we're surrounded
yes,
by.
the attitude that humans are yeast. We're simply we're we're taking over the world and we're destroying the world. I just want to know from these people, what is the perfect world? They
For
want
them,
to
it's without us. They're literally anti-human.
literally.
Ultimately, I mean, if you just keep pressing, just keep asking the questions, just keep asking the questions, you'll get to the point where they will say that the universe would be better without humanity. Which is, interestingly, this week we can put a name to this. This is literally the anti-Musk position. I have more admiration for Elon Musk this week than I have before, and it's because he keeps enunciating this position that humanity is, as far as we know, humanity is the only instance of the universe looking back on itself reflexively, that we are the self-awareness of the entire universe. We are the universe becoming awake to itself by our cultivation of our cognitive abilities. And I think that's an amazing attitude. I think it's exactly the right attitude to take, because we are a thing of wonder. We are the thing that can improve upon nature. Nature cannot improve upon itself. Nature is what it is, does what it does, cannot escape from doing what it's doing. And we are the what's his face? Erwin Schrodinger. I think Erwin Schrodinger is the world's most famous failure, the lifelong failure. 54 years old, comes up with the brilliant observation that you can't tell if the cat is dead or not until you look. Brilliant. Love it. Think it's great. But someone asked Erwin Schrodinger to define life, and he said life is an anantropic entity, an entity without entropy. Which is false. Obviously, we are not without entropy. We just delay it by reversing the effects of entropy so long as we're alive. But to define life as being anantropic is to simply evade the issue. It's to avoid the issue entirely. He hasn't explained anything. He's just said there are two categories of entities that I know about, and I'm only interested in one of them, the one that doesn't move. Um,
Human beings
what?
human beings are the only the human brain is the only machine that we are aware of that can observe the universe, and comprehend it.
Correct, and observe it reflexively. That Reflexively means to act upon yourself. I wash myself, lava say. I wash myself. We are the reflexive awareness of the universe. That obviously we are a piece of the universe. We're part of the universe. But by being aware of the universe, by incorporating the universe into our awareness, into our understanding, and into our realm of action, the things that we can do, we essentially become the universe. We are the universe by being aware of it. And it's the most amazing thing that ever occurred in nature so far as we know, because everything else in nature is just inert. It just does what it does. It is what it is, does what it does, eventually decays to dust and then recombines into something else. But none of it is intended. None of it is planned. None of it is considered, observed, wondered about, dreamed about, dreaded. None of these things. All of these things are actions of the mind, and the mind is ultimately the apotheosis of the universe. It is the Godhead of the universe, not in any sort of miraculous or divine way, but simply as the natural progression of causation over the course of time. And so plausibly, we could argue that there are other self-aware species out there. Where are they, said Fermi? And plausibly there are. What Musk said is that so far as we know, there are none nowhere near us. Which is completely reasonable, because the first star nearest to us is 4.5 light years away. And that's just the nearest. And once you start piling up distances, then it becomes really impossible not only to travel to other self-aware civilizations, but even to be aware of them, to receive the radio signals or whatever. It's just too much stuff in the way.
In a billion years, maybe there will be contact between life forms, but not in our.
And there's also
not in the humans will not be here when whatever
it's
humans.
Also a reasonable argument for extinction. And I don't even mean in the sense that I'm normally dreading the collapse of civilization, but just an ordinary extinction event. Another comet hits the Earth, like the one that the dinosaur killer, and there are no human survivors. And so our flame was lit really 5,000 years ago. You can trace us back 20 or 50 or 100,000 years, but our flame was really lit 5,000 years ago, and it really didn't turn into a reliable candle until about 2,500 years ago, maybe just 2,000 years ago. And it all could be over tomorrow, and that easily could have happened, hundreds or millions of times throughout this vast universe. That civilizations, human, self-awareness came into existence. Civilizations rose, conquered their planets, conquered their near territory, but before they could make the leap to other stars so that they could put their eggs in more than one basket, as Heinlein said, they were exterminated. They were extinguished by one force or another, either their own stupidity or simply natural forces. And so it certainly could have happened many times, but we don't know that. We have no evidence of that. And lacking evidence of that, we should celebrate the one evidence that we have of the self-awareness of the universe, which is us.
We are the self-awareness of the universe.
As far as we know, we are all the awareness there is in the universe.
I think we are evidence that the universe is trying to understand itself.
I disagree with that.
I think so. I think
I think causality in the natural sense, lacking human agency, lacking intent, causality is unintended.
I was in a Twitter discussion with somebody I love to read. Nolan knows, but he's a Christian, and he listed off a list of things about humanity. And I said, I agree with everything except that you believe that it has to be created, because you don't think evolution can develop a self-aware mind. He doesn't believe evolution could have developed free will. And my point is that the very start of life, as soon as it began, like that, there's some force in there trying to become aware of its environment. The first
absent from all things called artificial intelligence. This is present in the simplest form of life and absent in every bit of software.
Yeah. So as life became more aware of its environment, the eyes, the sense of touch, the sense of hearing, and the mind, the human or the brain becomes aware of its environment, once humans became self-aware, then it grew exponentially, because we could be aware of our own thoughts, we could form our own thoughts. We grew self-awareness and free will from
Yep.
that iterative process, bigger
I
and
agree.
bigger and bigger.
I agree with
So-
that, but I'll give you a contrary point of view. We were brachiator monkeys living in the trees, swinging from branch to branch and eating leaves. And there was a drought that lasted decades, not a 2-year or 5-year or 10-year drought, a drought that killed all the trees that we were living in. And we had to drop down out of the trees and down into the veldt and figure out a new way of living, a new survival pattern. So what happened is we hit an extinction event. This is the sort of event that happens in nature that wipes out the entire breeding population of a particular species of animal, and they disappear, they die. And that's what should have happened to us, except we were just clever enough to figure out how to pick up the thigh bone of a dead antelope and use it to crash it into the skull of another antelope, and get some dinner out of it. That human intelligence, as remarkable as it is luck and accidents. And the luck is the most important feature of all. That we lived through all kinds of things that should have been extinction events for us and weren't. And this is the prowess of the human mind as it was developing. We got better and better at assuring our survival against nature, red in tooth and claw. But all of this resulted from a series of genetic accidents that never should have happened in the first place. That literally, in the natural odds of nature, in other words, absent extremely unlikely rolls of the dice, overcomplicated species perish because they're unsuited to changes in their environment. And we can see this happening with thousands of organisms over the course of history. Organisms that perished because they were over-specialized for their environment. And that's what we were. We were over-specialized, and yet we were so over-specialized that we were capable of achieving even greater over-specialization to the point that we woke up. And having woke up, then suddenly we can explode our population because we control the environment. The environment no longer controls us. But greater complexity, yes. And this is kind of the natural order of evolution, is that the better adapted traits result in greater reproduction, which tend over time to push out the worse adaptations. But we were completely maladapted to one environment, and we arrived in another environment where we had no adaptation whatever, and yet we managed to survive anyway. And God bless us. 3 cheers for us, but I think it's more luck than prowess.
Yeah, it was lucky that we were adaptable enough.
Already smart enough. That's the real deal. We were already much smarter than dogs, for instance. And because we were already smart enough, we were able to get smarter.
So we can agree that the human mind is an amazing thing. And I believe that we've been making the world better, despite all of the just terrible things that
just by our numbers. Just measure the population.
We're making the world better. Elon Musk is making it better by sending a rocket to space, even though the first one crashed. What a disappointment. He says it was a 50-50 chance it would have made
That's the way rocketry works. That's how you learn by your mistakes. That's all. That's all. Software too. So software crashes 400 million times before you see it working.
So I love how we just start off and go wherever. It's amazing. It's amazing discussing things with you. But what we really want to talk about is, what can we do to fight the people, these anti-human people that seem to have taken over? I've recently realized that we're at the end point of a revolution. There's a tweet about it I've made, and it occurred to me this week that it's really, there was the original American Revolution, but the second American Revolution is not been called what it hasn't been given a proper name, and I'm calling it the American Marxist Revolution. it started with the long march through the institutions, what was it? The group of people that came over, the Marcuse and
Yeah, the Frankfurt
the
School,
Frankfurt
and the
School.
United States imported them. How brilliant!
And then we had the
Um,
sexual revolution, which basically was, getting back to what we talked about last week, the theft of theft of fatherhood. The sexual revolution stole the daughters from people,
Stole
from
fathers from the
fathers.
homes too.
Stole fathers from their homes. Then, in the meantime, we were sending our sons off to Vietnam at the same time. So all of this was happening. It was all part of a revolution. Well, I don't want to say every act was part of the revolution, but it's part of the history of this revolution, right? The revolution was happening in history, and they were moving through the institutions. The cultural theft was happening when the hippie movement took over the music and film industry, and everything was imbued with this destructive Marxist idea and philosophy. And here we are, we're towards the end of this revolution. It's make or break time for the revolution. It's not been an easy road for them. We have made it hard. We've struggled against them. There has been a struggle against them. There has been pushback, but right now it's impossible to push back because the World Economic Forum and BlackRock have control of all the corporations. All of the corporate management is woke ideologues. All they want to do is they want to sell beer and push wokeness on us, and push the trans agenda, the LGBT agenda. They want to push the climate change agenda. This anti-human, anti-father idea, philosophy has taken over everything. I like the Bud Light boycott, right? I think whenever we find a
Should have
chink,
happened to NASCAR 3 years ago. That's the problem.
yeah,
We're,
well,
we're already way too late.
whenever we find a chink in the armor, we have to hit at it. Like
I
there's
think
no
this is
question.
it's a good demonstration no matter what, because the fact of the matter is until the teacher snaps her ruler on the desk, the kids are going to act up.
Yeah.
And they're just doing what they can get away with, what they think they can get away with, and letting them know that they can't get away with that crap, I think is valuable. So
Aaron McIntyre was mocking it in one of his brief YouTube videos, and I thought he had a good point. Like all these things are happening, and what do we have to fight? What do we fight against? We go after Bud Light, we go after our light swill. That they had to add lime to this stuff to make it palatable. But it is a big corporation, Anheuser-Busch. Bud Light is only one part of their whole organization. They have lots of beers, and if you're not boycotting all of Anheuser-Busch, it's not going to get anywhere. But if you look at all the other ones, Coors, they're just as woke. It's just that Anheuser-Busch got the female VP in a position of the VP of marketing. She took over the marketing of a very male brand and said, no, it's too male. And we're going to feminize it by hiring a feminized male, Mulvaney, to be a spokesman. And it's a big finger, to the base of them, right?
that's what it is. They don't want you to eat bugs. They want you to eat shit. The bugs are literally a shit test. I mean, it's an unintended joke in there, but the bugs are literally a shit test. A shit test is something, I present you with a shit test to see what you'll do. So I show up at an event that you're hosting and I say, oh, my bags are over there. That's a shit test. I'm finding out if you're my minion, if you're my servant. I think that's a repulsive, by the way. I wouldn't do that. I never do that. But I'm very aware of it when other people do it, particularly when they try to do it to me. But a shit test is just to find out where you stand. It's a real common expression in the pickup world, because women do it just to shoot guys down, to make them go away. But that's what the bugs are all about, is a shit test. If they can make you eat the bugs, they will come to a point where they will make you eat your own feces. That's the goal. And the goal is not nutrition or anything at all like that. The goal is humiliation. The purpose is humiliation. That's what they're up to. If they can humiliate you, you won't fight back. And that's what they want. They don't want subjects. They want subjugation. They want you subjugated. They want you to be a serf. And they are inserting the planet right now. There's certainly not enough electric car batteries to go around. Everybody who's driving now cannot replace their car with a battery powered car, because there's simply not enough raw materials to make those batteries. So what are we going to do? We're going to put people on foot. That's the plan.
And we're not own a car.
What?
They don't want you to own a car.
Correct. They don't want you to own anything. They don't want you to have any of the things that provide liberty and dignity to human life. They want you to be a subject. They want you. And why do they want you alive at all? And frankly, that's the question everyone should be asking, is that if they can do all of these things to you, why can't they kill you? And once you get to that question, you say, how soon will that be happening? The purpose of abortion is to rationalize genocide, to get people in a frame of mind where they're willing to say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, old people, they're nothing but a drain on society. Of course we have to kill them. Oh, Downs people, yeah, if they actually make it past the abortion barrier, of course we have to kill them. And if you can rationalize killing one person for any specious reason, if you can rationalize one murder, you can rationalize all of them. And this is why utilitarianism invariably leads to Marxism, because it is Marxism. And Marxism is genocide. Utilitarianism is genocide with makeup on, with a nice costume on.
We're in the first stage of the self-driving car. We're just entering the second stage, where the car can drive you where it wants. But the first stage was your Google map. You plug in an address and it gives you directions, and you follow those directions. The next stage is where we're just transitioning into, is where you get in a car and you give it an address and it takes you there. So this separates you it adds a level of separation from you and your physical environment. Now you don't even have to know where you're going. Like, it was bad enough when Google Maps was telling you turn left here, turn right here. And there's all the stories about people getting lost because Google Maps told them to go straight into a field because the road hadn't been built yet, and they got stuck
right off the Santa Monica Pier.
And so the second stage is another level of separation from the physical environment, because now you don't even need to steer the wheel. You don't need to know, okay, well, if you know generally the area you're at, you're like, oh, Google's got something screwed up in it. I know a better way, and I know, you know, the ins and outs of it. But now you just get in the car and you get out when it says you've arrived. The third stage is the scarier one, where Google says you have an appointment, your car has arrived. And at this point, you're completely lost in control. You don't know where you started or where you ended. It doesn't matter. You're locked in a cell. You're now in a cell, literally. You may think it's a nice house, but you don't know where it is. Like, this is another generation of people. Like, I'm talking.
Like what's 6 times 7? I ask everyone. Nobody knows. What's 6 times 7? It's gone. The times tables are gone. Whatever it is they're learning in school, whatever strange sexual practices they're learning in school, they're not learning the times tables. And, well, what do I need it for? I've got a calculator. Okay, well, fine. That's a real good plan. And you're right. We will get to the place. I know people who do not drive without GPS, who drive the same routes every day and use the GPS every day. I cannot imagine that. If I drive anywhere, if I'm going to drive anywhere repeatedly, I learn every possible in and out way of getting there, every way of getting around a problem. I can't stand not knowing. I literally can't stand not knowing all of the ways to avoid trouble.
It's too useful to avoid.
Yeah, literally.
It gives you the traffic updates real time. And It's found a new way. Do you want to take this other alternate route? I don't know. It's so annoying, but yet it's so useful. I
But
can't.
I'll give you the one that you didn't mention is the Johnny Cab. Do you remember from Total Recall, the Johnny Cabs?
Yeah,
The fake cab drivers, but they were robot cab drivers, but the Johnny Cab could take you straight to the police station.
absolutely. And that's where your appointment is. You don't know. You say, yeah, it just tells you you have an appointment. Oh, I didn't know I had an appointment. The car's arrived. I'm going to get in the car. Where is it taking you? I don't know, because I don't even know where I'm starting. Right? I'm living in a cell within a neighborhood, and there
Wow.
could be war in the next
This is
neighborhood.
literally the Middle Ages.
It could be war in the next neighborhood, right? They could have the houses could be flattened in the next neighborhood, but the car would just take me around a way where I don't get to see all of the carnage that happened to the next neighborhood because I'm not even allowed to see it or know that it exists. I don't know any physical reality. I'm completely dependent on this machinery, this system. And once they get you in that cage and you now have to justify your existence, back to your point. Now you're in a cage and somebody has to feed you like a pet and you have to justify your existence. Are you going to go be the faithful retriever and go get the duck and bring it back? Or do we just cut you off now? Right? Do we take you to we're going to take it to a new home now. And it's a 10 by 12 thing with a
How
cot.
many days of going without food will it take for you to consent to voluntary suicide?
And
And this is completely doable in Canada, and no one would know. I mean, you've already got so-called voluntary suicide. All you need is a signature on the form. Well, how many days is it going to take without food? Oh, we'll give you food. It's not. That would be inhumane to not give you food. How about we just leave the lights on 24/7 and play you nothing but thrash metal, real loud? How many days will it take for you to sign this form?
Dude,
This is
they don't need you to sign a form because you've already consented to their control. At that point, people won't have a concept of consent. They might. They
will.
Consent,
They will. Everybody knows when they're being violated. That's the beautiful thing about being a physical ananthropic entity, is that everybody knows, even the paramecium know that when they're being violated.
and this is what we need fathers to teach their kids.
Well, we need to teach them the more abstract parts of it. It's when the hands hit your throat that you understand what's going on. You don't have to be told what's going on. You don't need any abstract understanding of what's going on. And I think this is actually one of the things that I find most admirable about people, is that no matter how nihilistic they get, if you put them in that circumstance where someone is literally trying to kill them, they'll fight back. Mm-hmm. No matter how nihilistic they are, no matter how anti-human they are, no matter how anti-life, no matter how philosophically screwed up they are, when you physically threaten their lives, they will fight back. And I think that's an amazing thing. This is what unites us with all the other organisms. This is what organisms do. They fight to stay alive. And we may not do it when we're operating at an abstract level. We may do deliberately self-destructive things at an abstract level. But when your life is threatened with immediate extinction, you fight back. And I think that's a great thing.
So do you believe that Marxism could conceivably erase this instinct from humanity?
Nope.
You don't think so, but
nope. That once they get you in the gulag, that's when you discover what you were wrong about. And if you can go into a gulag and find a Marxist proselytizer in the gulag, he's a stooge. He's a fink. He's looking for people to turn in. But there's nobody who understood who was living with the actually successfully living, not killed, but successfully living with the full consequences of Marxism, who is a Marxist. That's one of the things that's insane about importing so many people from South and Central America, is a great many of them have experience with Marxism and they hate it. The Democrats think they're importing Democrats, and they may find out that they've imported a whole lot of Republicans or libertarians.
Since we're on dystopian futures, I just think about Orwell when the main character thought there might be hope in the proles, but the proles were too ignorant to even think about their predicament beyond their immediate needs.
Potomac Circenses. This is an ancient. Who was it? That was Marshall, or I can't remember. Juvenal. Potomac Circenses, bread and circuses. And I was thinking about this with respect to father theft. That tyrants create wars in order to create patriots. Do you understand that?
Mhm.
That we have people at home who are really dissatisfied with the tyrant and really would like to see him replaced. And so the tyrant goes and starts a foreign war against an adversary who is our natural enemy, always the historic enemy that we have, Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. Carthage is to have been destroyed. That's the literal grammar of it. But the reason for the wars is to create patriots at home and to take the hotheads at home and send them off to war in the hopes that half or more of them won't come back. In the case of Rome in particular, Roman wars were fought by freeholders, by hoplites, so freeholders in the land. And so the Roman campaign season was through the winter, because in the summer, dad needed to be home to be working his farm. And the Romans, as their empire grew, needed soldiers to be on campaign longer and longer and longer. And so they kept these guys, essentially conscripted them until their farms went broke. And then they went and bought up all the farms. And so the rich tyrants in Rome were literally dispossessing the fathers of Rome by conscripting them into warfare, whether or not it was of any benefit to them at all. It destroyed their lives, destroyed their families, destroyed their homes. And this is one of those things that I can point to again and again and again in history. The world wars, the two world wars in the 20th century, World War I and World War II, whatever supposed benefits they achieved, they killed a whole lot of really good fathers. So a lot of guys who were already fathers, and a whole lot of guys who really would have been really good fathers, except they never got the chance because they were slaughtered in war. And this is the tyrant maintaining his power by removing his competition, by killing off his competition. The people who would be most likely to resist his tyranny, he sends off to get killed in wars instead.
So as we see history repeating itself in such ways, it seems we're about to start another war, or be involved in another war. Obviously Russia, Ukraine, but Taiwan is getting tense. Is there a way that we could take this the combination of government, corporate, this corporate government entity that we see, this uniparty war machine that's tied together by Davos World Economic Forum elite, and we see it bringing it right down to this Anheuser-Busch thing, where they are controlled by BlackRock and by these giant ETFs. Can we take a page out of their book, go to Wall Street and take this fight there? That's where the fight is being taken. Can we get either replace executives at one of these corporations with executives that are going to fight back, or start our own ETFs and buy our own beer companies and fight back that way? I think this is where it has to go. But what do you think about fighting them on Wall Street?
I don't see it happening. I mean, this is one of those things that, like
it
for
must
instance,
happen.
Jeremy's Razors, Jeremy Boring of Daily Wire comes out with Jeremy's Razors. And, Jeremy's Razors is really a fun thing to buy if you want to make a point. But if you do the math, you discover that Jeremy's Razors sell for about 4 times what you would pay at retail if you went to go to CVS to buy Gillette.
I went back to safety razors, by the way.
What's that?
Safety razors are the way to go. You buy a safety razor, you get plain razors for 200 razors for $20 from Amazon. It's the smoothest shave you'll ever get. You don't need to buy.
These are the flat babies with the two blades that fit into the screw up
Yep.
razor.
Called a safety.
That was, that's Gillette. That's Gillette's original product.
It
and
is true.
The invention of the marketing plan, make it up on the blades. This is where it was invented, was by Gillette with those razor blades that they would give you. And like they'll mail me 2 or 3 razors a year. They will mail me their razors with a couple of free blades in there, just because they want to make a customer out of me. And their intention by giving me the free razor is to make it up by selling me blades in the future, to make it up with the blade. Marketing kinds of products now was invented by Gillette. It's cool. It's a cool idea. I think one of the things that you can look for when you're shopping around old houses, when you're visiting people, is go look in the medicine chest and see if they have a little slit in the back wall of the medicine chest so you can drop your razor blades down, dispose of them behind the medicine chest. And that was a temporary thing. It was probably about 50 years that they put those in medicine chests, but you can still see them. But yeah, I mean, at that point, you're talking about, let's go back to the razor strop and the handheld razor. That's all cool. That's all cool too. I'm not arguing against any of this. On the one hand, starting alternative brands is a good idea, except that brands are really good at it. Successful brands are really good at everything that they do. They're not just good at making beer. They're good at the whole process of, the manufacturing process, the marketing process, the accounting process. Every piece of that business is already highly optimized. And for you to compete against it as a startup is really a problem because you haven't done all that optimization. But the greater argument that I would make is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, that when you put someone in a position where rent seeking is possible, then you discover that person's character. Because unless that person has someone, father figure, mother, grandmother, someone whom they would hate to see them committing a crime, they would hate to know that my grandfather could find out that I've done this awful thing. Unless they have that kind of self-restraint, then they will find ways to advantage themselves or advantage their political position or their political party or whatever. They will find ways to cheat, just like Mike Morell admitted, ex-head of the CIA. I mean, how much more vetting could we have for an individual that we vetted this man's character sideways, 7 ways from Sunday, and yet he's presented with the opportunity to interfere with an election. He says, heck yeah, me and 50 of my best buddies will interfere with this election right away. If you manage to make it to the top of some ziggurat, and by being at the top of that ziggurat, you have the ability to divert events in ways that are more pleasing to you rather than the way they should occur without your intervention. If you can restrain yourself from doing that, you are a man of true character. And I would bet against most of the people involved. The best thing that happened to the Tea Party was that it was destroyed by the IRS. That the Tea Party says, okay, we're going to start going to meetings. We're going to get involved. We're going to run for local offices. We're going to run for Congress. And ultimately, what happened, the Tea Party members who did run for Congress are now just part of the same, uniparty, war party gang of corrupt idiots, because that's what Washington does to people. You go to Washington and Washington corrupts you. You don't reform Washington. Washington corrupts you. And that's what would happen to us. If we decide to fight them at their own game, they will win because it's their game. Never play the other man's game. That's my answer, is never play the other man's game.
Well,
because
go ahead.
Just because the other guy will win. When you're playing his game, he already knows every move you're going to make. He already knows everything you're going to do. He's going to beat you.
Okay, this is what I see. Yeah, it's the CIA is the enemy of the people. They've been that at least since Kennedy was assassinated.
But you mentioned folk. You mentioned rock music. Rock music was the CIA, or at least folk rock. The folk rock revolution in Laurel Canyon. There's a book about it. It was the CIA. The anti-conceptual art, de Kooning and Jackson Pollock and those guys. They were funded by the CIA. And as far as we know, everything else is too. Everything. But Satoshi Nakamoto, as far as I'm concerned, until it's proved otherwise, Satoshi Nakamoto is a spook.
Yeah.
And everything else that we might involve ourselves with is at huge risk of being infiltrated by the FBI or the CIA.
Well, we don't have the power to take down the deep state at this point.
Right.
This is just realistic. We don't have the power to take down BlackRock and replace or do what I'm suggesting in this tweet is replace the executives at the top of these things, companies, with people who don't support wokeism and anti-human global warming measures. But also the alternate brands and boycotts, they're just nibbling away at the edges. It's not gonna be effective on its own. What would really be effective would be an ETF, a somebody like Elon Musk or somebody with that kind of clout and money starting their own funds that fund companies that start to at least be neutral. Can we ask somebody to be politically neutral that I can go and shop there and buy their product without supporting some of these agendas that are being foisted on us and used against us, that are fighting. We're fighting back. We're hitting ourselves over the head by buying a Bud Light. I'm smacking my, or any beer by that, for that matter. But I'm buying a beer and I'm just smashing it over my head because it's hurting me by supporting these companies. But if when I look at my bank statement and my investments, who am I investing with? Well, I got to invest with these same companies, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah, I mean, Vanguard is number 2 on your list of bad guys after BlackRock, and Vanguard is where I would think probably 40% or more of all the retirement funds in Canada are with Vanguard funds.
yeah,
just because that's the way the world works. That your company managed fund and your company is going to the. So if it's not Vanguard, it's Fidelity. And
what I'm saying is taking my consumer dollars to somebody who I support is nibbling away at the edges. If I can take my investment dollars and put them in something that's going to support a humanist agenda, then we're going to get attention. That's what I mean by taking it to Wall Street. I'm not trying to play their game. I'm trying to start pushing back in that realm.
Plausibly it could work. I mean, especially if you could get somebody like Elon Musk, somebody who's got 10 or 11 figures of assets to throw at a problem. I'm not really deeply despairing. I understand everything that you're talking about. We witnessed an attempted color revolution in 2020 and it failed. And I predicted at the time that it would fail because they aborted their foot soldiers. Revolutions require lots and lots and lots of young people, and they don't have any. They aborted their foot soldiers. They aborted the people that they need to effect the color revolution. They may succeed anyway, just because the United States is dissipated. We're a corrupt culture, and that literally all of this stuff that we look at now in a horror, like all of the sexual shenanigans that are going on, the sexual revolution that you mentioned, but also the trans business and all of that stuff, we can find that repeatedly in history. This comes up again and again in history, and where it comes up is where empires are failing, where they're about to collapse. That's where you see that kind of bizarre sexual expression, is when an empire is about to collapse. The people that we're fighting against at the corporate level, at the government level, at the institutional level, none of those people breed. They do not breed. Fewer than one child per married couple, and there aren't that many married couples. I think in the short run, they're able to do some serious damage. In the long run, they will not be here. They just won't be here. And I don't worry about them too much, because they are resigning from the human race. They're resigning from the future. And I'm all for that. I think it's a great thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about another place where this Leviathan is weakening. The cathedral is weakening. They're messing themselves up. they're screwing the pooch here when they want to try to incentivize bad credit. Like this is going to collapse the whole system. I have it up on the screen right now. So Biden, I just saw this yesterday, and I haven't like delved deep into what the hell he's actually.
I don't even understand the math, and I'm in real estate. I don't understand the math of it. I asked a lender that I know in California to explain it to me. I don't understand how this fee business works, but this is the perfect insanity of Marxism. Penalize the healthy, literally penalize ordinary people in order to provide blood transfusions to hemophiliacs. And really, I mean, that's what it boils down to. It's literally anti-health. It's anti-financial health. It encourages thrifty people to be spendthrifts because having a 680 FICO score hurts you, whereas coming in at 675 at least doesn't cause you extra pain. But at the same time, it takes people who are already bad at paying their bills and saying, here's your reward for being bad at paying your bills. This is another example of father theft, by the way. The net beneficiaries, the net sufferers, the people who are penalized will be married couples, especially married couples with children. Those will be the people who will end up paying, because that's where you find 680 credit score, 680 and above. And the net beneficiaries will be single moms, reliable income but bad credit history. The claim will be made that it's there to help so-called people of color, but their problems are greater than that. Tends to relate to reliable income and bad credit history. If you don't have a reliable income, you're not going to qualify for a mortgage, no matter how friendly the terms are. And so that it will end up benefiting primarily white single moms will be the beneficiaries of this program. If it ever is implemented, it's a tax. Taxation in the United States is the House of Representatives only. In other words, it has to be done by legislation, can't be done by executive order. So what we're looking for is sometime between now and May 1st, a federal court to enjoin this stupid thing. But if they don't, it'll be 12 or 14 years of worrying its way through the courts before the Supreme Court throws it out. At which point they might not throw it out, because that's how stupid they become. The DACA program, obviously anti-constitutional, obviously illegal. And they said, but well, a whole lot of people have gotten used to it by now, so we have to let it stand. This is anti-rule of law from the absolute last place we can suffer people being anti-rule of law is the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court becomes another political body, then we're finished. The United States is done.
Oh my God. The Supreme Court becoming a political party and running the financial system into the ground.
Right.
I tweeted the accelerationist in me wants this to go forward. I want this.
I understand that attitude. I do. I sympathize.
So I mean, we have to fight this war on many fronts, and I think one of them is always just let them go. Let them. They want to make stupid moves. Let them. We're making plenty of stupid moves on our side too, but
that comes back to the same thing, though. Do you up your own organization in terms of, your own hedge fund or your own alternative BlackRock, or do you head for the hills? And the argument that you just made in terms of acceleration is you really ought to head for the hills.
Yeah.
Because if you anticipate collapse, if you welcome collapse, if you are cheering on people who are hastening collapse, then you have to conclude that sometime soon there's going to be a collapse, and what are you doing about it? Well, my solution is being elderly. My wife and I are old enough that we are very grateful that we're not young. I have nothing but sympathy for young people like us, young people like we were 50 years ago. I cannot imagine what their lives are going to be like. It's just horrifying to me. And I say this to a father. I'm sad to say this, that you've got kids of that age. You've got teenagers, and they're going to be treading into this world. And I think it's a good thing that they're in Canada rather than the United States, because I think it's actually worse here to be a straight white male. But I could be wrong about that, and it's a matter of inches and hours anyway. So,
well, I think in order to be in a fight, you have to risk everything. right? It's just like when you're in a negotiation, if you're not willing to walk away, then you're not in a negotiation.
You're not. You're
If
not.
you're
You're just trying to go negotiate the best possible salary.
if if you're not if you're in a war, and if you're not willing to let destruction reign, and then you're not in a war. You're just waiting for your chance to surrender to terms, right? It's the
Fiat
same.
justitia ruat caelum. Let justice be done, though the heavens themselves may fall. This is something that is most comfortably said by people upon whom the heavens will not be falling. And that's why I understand what you're saying. You've got to fight to the death, but now I'm saying that you personally have to fight to the death. And so are you fortifying your house? Are you acquiring weapons? Are you putting landmines all around in your yard? Are you organizing with your neighbors to be able to shut off all of the ingress and outgress streets in your neighborhood at a moment's notice? I mean, there are all kinds of things that we would be doing if we intended to fight. And if we were doing those things, we would be subject to surveillance. You better believe it, because that's the only thing they really care about. The only law that they will defend to the death is the law against deposing them. And if you look at all like you have a plan to depose them, they will attend to you. They'll subsidize you. They'll fund you in your efforts so they can arrest you for bigger crimes. But the alternative to, if you can't beat them, join them. If you can't join them, beat them. My answer would be, if it really looks like you're going to die either way, why not just beat it? And if I were a younger man, that's probably what I would be doing. There was a time that we were involved with a property way out in the desert, had an incredible well, 600 gallons a minute well, incredible. Had solar power, had its own phone tower. I mean, this was literally an on-the-grid, off-the-grid property. It was completely off the grid in the sense that it was disconnected from everything. There was no last mile of anything to this house. But meanwhile, it had all modern conveniences because it had huge solar, it had a diesel generator, we were in love with this place. And it had 27,000 acres of grazing rights, federal grazing rights. It was unbelievable property. This is a way to escape from all of the consequences of Marxism while maintaining your life and your lifestyle, while living your life, while living a joyous, happy, fruitful, productive life without looking over your shoulder all the time. And unfortunately, that's obviously impossible for most people. There are an incredibly limited number of properties like that. And you have to be able to provide for yourself once you obtain a property like that. We're all of us kind of stuck in this trap, in this matrix. And the reality is we're waiting to figure out who's going to be in charge once everything shakes out. You mentioned the cathedral, which ties right into NRFs, to the neo-reactionary movement. And I don't love their celebration of hierarchy. They do it again and again and again. They reference hierarchy again and again and again. And I'm thinking that hierarchy is the problem. Hierarchy is what got us into this trouble in the first place, believing that there's a lesser and a greater, and that the greater has the right to order the lesser around. This is completely contrary to human nature. It's not the way we're made. We're made to pilot our own boats. We're made to be in charge of our own lives. And everything that anybody else does to circumscribe that process creates resentment, creates rancor, ultimately results in violence. So I don't think there is a hierarchical solution to this problem. It's the exact opposite, is eliminating all hierarchies except voluntarily chosen ones, which are obviously subject to termination voluntarily at any given time also. If you can't get out, then you didn't get in. If you can't volunteer to get out, you didn't volunteer to get in. You're already a slave. You're already a serf. But I don't think that. What's that?
I agree with all of that.
I don't think there's any alternative to leaving people free, entirely free. I don't think there is any hierarchical solution to this problem.
I think if the head for the hills, get out of cities strategy is tenable, but it's inevitably they will come to that property that you're talking about, they will say, "Oh, you have federal grazing rights? We can take those away. We can take
That's
everything
exactly,
away."
that is 100% true. You're already in bed with them.
It's
Even
only
then,
gonna delay the inevitable. Maybe you can get another generation of kids, but if you're not gonna fight for the freedoms for everybody, and I'm thinking I want to get as many people aware and on side as possible. So there's one other thing I want to bring up here. Trying to share the screen before we say goodbye, because we're getting to the end and we found a lot of room where we can agree. But we got to talk about trying to get the screen up here. A little bit of anarchy in London caused by Sadiq Khan's ULEZ zone. And if you don't know what the ULEZ zone is, he's made it so in parts of London you can't drive. If you drive anything other than an ultra low emissions vehicle, you're subject to a £12 50 pence. I'm probably getting it wrong, but a tax, and it's £12. That's like $25
real money. Yeah.
a day just to drive your car. So, and he's expanding this. So I found here it is. I found an article about how the anarchy is asserting itself in the face of tyranny here. Where the vandals are finding different ways to sabotage the cameras. You can see in this shot, there's they cut the cord. Brilliant that people would come up with this idea and leave such a vulnerable vulnerability as a dangling cord that you could just
Right.
simply cut. So I just want to leave it in a note that the greater tyranny asserts itself, the more anarchy becomes inevitable. It's like like you always like to talk about how many slave owners were found dead by gunshot or murdered in history.
First lieutenants too.
First lieutenants.
It's the number one cause of death for first lieutenants is died in battle with a gunshot from behind.
But this also brings up a point. If you go to this article, I don't know how to put it in the comments. Still all new.
I love this stuff. I love it. This is monkey wrenching, is what it is. Edward Abbey, was that his name? He was in Arizona. He was a writer in Arizona, but he coined this term monkey wrenching, which is using small and cheap tools to frustrate big, expensive acts of tyranny. And the meme on the internet right now is use a can of silly string to take out a security camera.
Silly string works.
Yeah, well, it does, except you're going to be photographed while you're doing it. That's the beautiful thing about getting the wire from behind, is that the camera isn't capturing your image while you're disabling it. But all of this stuff, we'll see more and more monkey wrenching. And frankly, what the tyrants need to worry about is assassination. Ultimately, judges in particular will piss people off enough that people will take the so-called take the law into their own hands. It may not be assassination; it may just be arson. But the trouble with pushing people around is eventually they will push back.
It is true that people will eventually fight back, but what is happening is we're getting pushed into a position, atomized, put in, isolated, where they're trying to take away hope, where you wouldn't have any hope of escaping, and there's nowhere to escape to. It is a very real risk, I find.
I agree with you. That is their goal, is to demoralize people so that they do not believe they have the ability to resist.
Yeah. But I want to point out the fact that Sadiq Khan is got some chutzpah. He's got some serious balls to push forward with this initiative, and he's going through with it in the face of overwhelming opposition. Like they did the polling in London, and nobody wants this ULEZ thing to go forward, but he's already purchased the cameras, right? Against the will of the people, against their wishes. He's already taken their money and
Make them undo it. This is
ordered
a
it.
classic government tactic. Make them undo it.
Yeah.
Make them waste the money, and then make a big issue about how all that money is going to be wasted. Yes, we shouldn't have proceeded without the public's approval, but now that we've spent all this money, who wants to see it all wasted? Oh God, I hate them. I hate them all. I really hate them. And
Same argument. They implemented a gun registry in Canada, and it was a boondoggle. It cost $1 billion back when $1 billion was a lot of money. And they promised it would only cost $1 million, and it cost $1 billion. If that gives you any idea of what
it's only 1,000 to 1 error. Come on.
But when the Harper conservatives got in and started reversing it, the same argument was made. We've already invested all of this money, and you're just going to throw it down the drain. We're all safer because of they registered every single long gun, which meant shotguns, rifles, everything. They already have a registry for handguns in Canada because handguns are evil. We know. You're not allowed to protect yourself in Canada, but we've already invested this money. Now you're going to just throw it away. And they tried to save the data and everything. And one of the successes in recent Canadian history was Stephen Harper. At least he wasn't perfect, but at least he got rid of the long gun registry.
There's an AI running in Canada right now that knows where every long gun in the country is.
Oh yeah, they still have the data.
Well, it doesn't even matter. The AI could work entirely from social media and still be accurate to say 95%. Could identify the guns just by the words that you choose and the words that you refrain from choosing. Your ability to hide yourself from anyone in the government now is essentially nil, because you are so easily identified by your word choices. Just using data. You don't have to have photos or movies or anything at all like that. Just using the things that you type into the internet, your spelling errors identify you. But all kinds of things, all of your word choices and all of your word choices taken together, between the US and Canada, it's probably about 500 million people. And each one of those will be unique to an AI, as unique as your photograph, as unique as your fingerprints.
Okay.
Yep. You can't hide anymore.
That's the situation. So as we're over an hour now, just before we wrap up, I just want to say I disavow silly string or
assassinating judges,
spray paint or assassinations,
arson.
I disavow these anarchist actions against the great infrastructure and people of our government.
And I concur in 100%. I advocate none of those activities, nor any other sort of violence or any other violation of the human rights of any individual, no matter how deserving of your contempt that person might be. And I want to say that I think you should be of good cheer regardless, because your enemies are resigning from the human race. They are self-annihilating by refusing to reproduce and refusing to transmit their ideas in a way that will be efficacious going forward. They are successfully recruiting other people's children, but they're not turning those people into useful ideologues. They're activists, yes, and possibly assassins, but they're not going to be effective as intellectuals going forward because they're not cultivating those talents. They're not raising their own kids, and they're not cultivating the talents they need in the children that they do manage to recruit. And so in very short order, they will have vanished. I'll be dead by then. Possibly everybody listening will be dead by then, but humanity will thrive because the misanthropes are resigning from the human race. God bless them.
And if they are successful in taking over and enslaving us, just look at how inept they are at managing systems and managing.
That's another great point.
It's going to crash. It's going to come down, and the human spirit will overcome, and we will find ways. We will find ways to hack AI. We'll find ways to hack self-driving cars. It's inevitable. We are we are the animal that can defeat itself, but we can also defeat our the machines that we create.
Correct. And, we could defy nature, and we can defy our own nature and become what we are, what the universe intends for us to become, simply by being more worthy of it, being more worthy of the gift and the miracle of human existence. And the greater that we can strive to be worthy of our wisdom, the more wise we will be.
That is perfect thought to end on. Greg, I think this is, as promised, was the best Where We Can Agree stream yet, and it's only going to get better. I'm getting better. You're getting better. Everyone listening is getting better, and we will make the world better.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's it for now.
Like and subscribe. Bless you. Thank you.
Like and subscribe. I always forget that part. I'm getting there. I'm getting better. One more of the things I need to learn. All right. Closing is another thing. Take care, everyone.